catch us up with where the teachers are at, because there was a lot of talk about the support for the idea of a general strike, and as I recall, the Common Front's strategy, you were going to go back and do some consultations and
Yeah.
so on. Where is all of that?
Well, your first question was where are the teachers at, and in a nutshell, they're back at work. All 51,000 of them. As a union, they chose not to defy the legislation. They went back to work, but they didn't do it happily. So we have 51,000 very frustrated, angry teachers in this province who feel really disrespected by our provincial government. The agreement, and we shouldn't even use the word agreement. There's a contract that was not agreed upon by the teachers, that was imposed on them by the government. It's a contract that basically was the same as the one that they rejected by more than 90%. So this is a contract that the workers didn't agree to, was imposed on them by Bill 2. And so you've got 51,000 teachers who are angry, feeling disrespected. Morale is bad. But there was a lot of energy that was that built up during that strike from the teachers who were proud of themselves for standing up and demanding better for themselves and for all their kids and for the public education system. And that energy had to go somewhere. And where it's gone is recall campaigns. And so as it stands right now, I think there are more north of 25 recall campaigns that have either been initiated under our province's recall legislation, which I'll remind folks was introduced by the UCP themselves to give citizens an opportunity to have a voice about whether or not they want us continue to support this government between elections. They're using that legislation. A lot of the energy is coming from teachers who feel disrespected. A lot of them are involved in the recall campaigns, but also the vast majority of Albertans supported the teachers during that strike and their effort to protect our public education system from a government that seems to want to underfund it and dismantle it in favor of private education. And so that education has moved, that energy has moved over to recall campaigns. Like I said, I think there's 4 that are already collecting signatures. But then there's another 20 or so that have filed paperwork and will soon be in the position to start collecting signatures to recall their UCP MLAs.
What about the second question? What's coming? How is your consultation process, your education process, et cetera? Tell us about that.
Well, there's a number of things that we're doing. And I know that there are a lot of folks out there who are disappointed that we didn't pull the pin and call a general strike the day after, on the day of or the day after Bill 2 was passed by the UCP. But I've said this publicly before, but if the teachers had defied and refused to go back to work, I think that would have been a trigger for a massive province-wide job action. When that didn't happen and the teachers went back to work, Frank, I'll be honest, like some of the air went out of the balloon, but it was a wake-up call for us in the labor movement. And what it told us is that we were not as prepared as we should be for quick action in response to something like Bill 2 and the use of the notwithstanding clause to strip workers of their rights. And so, this is, we saw it coming. We know that the government, is willing to use the notwithstanding clause as a regular tool as opposed to a last resort. We just saw this week they're using the notwithstanding clause against a vulnerable group, in this case, trans kids. So, they use it against the teachers to strip them of their workplace rights and the right to strike. They use it against trans kids and their democratic rights. And so, the obvious question is who's next? And honestly, the big irony is that this government, just yesterday, I saw the premier on TV trying to justify the use of the notwithstanding clause against trans kids. And she said, "Oh, we're doing it to keep kids safe." But I think it's becoming more and more clear, Markham, that the people who need to be kept safe are Alberta citizens, and they need to be kept safe from this government that is running roughshod over our Constitution, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, our democratic rights. This is a rogue government that has its own perverse definition of democracy. They're thumbing their nose at our Constitution, the highest laws in our land, and frankly, it's just a matter of time before other Albertans get steamrollered over by this government and its increasingly authoritarian approach. But you did ask, so where are we at with the general strike? I'm not trying to avoid that. We recognize that we need to build towards one, and so we've actually established a multi-union general strike committee. They met just yesterday. We have an action plan, and we're developing that action plan. And I hesitate to share more information than that, but it's going to be a process of building. And so what folks are more likely to see is demonstrations building towards a province-wide protest. And in the same way that we say, in advance of workplace strikes, that sometimes we put up picket lines that we call the practice pickets. You're going to probably see something like that before we get to the actual general strike, but it's coming. And as I said at a press conference last week, the thing that really changed in this province as a result of Bill 2 is that we in the labor movement have come to the conclusion that the tools that are available to us by the traditional labor relations framework, so things like mediation, arbitration, the right to strike, right to collective bargain, all those things that we've used for decades as a labor movement to help create the middle class, improve wages, working conditions, negotiate pensions. Those tools are being degraded, not just here in Alberta, but I mean, the federal government, has been using Section 107 of the Federal Labor Code to end strikes and order workers back to work, like the flight attendants, the rail workers, the port workers. So the framework, the old toolkit is not working. And this was a real wake-up call for us. It's basically saying to us that the toolkit that we've relied on has been degraded to the point that we can no longer rely on it to get a good deal for working people. And so we're going to have to build new tools. And that's what we're doing with these conversations about a general strike. So general strike is outside of the toolkit. It's technically illegal. But because the tools have been degraded and to especially now with the use of the notwithstanding clause against worker rights here in Alberta, at some point, the deal that we made like decades ago, working people with governments, we said, we'll give up going on wildcat strikes in exchange for a framework that provided fair outcomes. But if they game the system so much that the system no longer works, we're going to have to basically revisit the deal, the great compromise that brought labor peace in this country and in this province. And if the tools that they gave us to ensure labor peace can no longer be relied on, then we have to revisit our end of the deal, which was labor peace. Okay, so that's what we've turned a page here. We're the only province in the country that's talking about general strike. We're planning for it, and we're creating a new tool that we're going to use, and it's a protest tool, but that involves, and this is the thing that gets us, Markham. They're telling us that they're going to pass rules, they're going to introduce fines, and they're going to tell people that they can't withdraw their labor ever. And that sounds an awful lot like slavery to us. If people can't choose to withdraw their labor and they get fined and penalized for it, then that's not a kind of democratic society that I think any of us want to live in. And so what we're saying is that that was the straw that broke the camel's back for us. General strike is now a reality. It's under active discussion. We're building towards it. Yes, a lot of people were disappointed that we didn't pull the pin before, but it was a wake-up call for us. It showed us that we weren't ready. But if she tries it again, I'll just, and I sort of alluded to this, but I'll emphasize it again. If she tries that with AUPE, This is a union that's been planning for this for months, okay? And they're part of our common front. And the teachers didn't defy a back to work order, but Daniel Smith should not count on AUPE and the LPNs and the HEA uh, thinking, agreeing to not defy, because this is different group, different scenario, and the results will probably also be different. So Daniel Smith should proceed very cautiously.
Well, Gil, this is issues not going away, and we'll be following up with you in the coming weeks and months to see where your process is at. And thank you very much for this.
Okay, thanks, Markham. Take care.